My title is Dean for Admissions and Financial Aid, and in that role I work very closely with our academic departments to determine the ideal size for incoming cohorts, and then to determine what the funding packages look like for our students during their periods of enrollment here. And I have a group of wonderful colleagues here at GSAS, many of whom students get to know pretty well during their time here. And I work with that group to make sure that they have all the resources they need to do their jobs as best possible. Oh, great questions. So I would say about 20 years or so ago, the financial aid program started evolving pretty dramatically into what we had today. But before that, the program was very different. It was really a need-based program. So what would happen is, at the time that someone was applying for enrollment in a program here, they would actually be asked to give financial information for themselves and their parents. And the financial aid staff would actually do a determination of financial needs, similar to what happens in Harvard College today. And that financial need would have some determining factor. It would serve as a determining factor in what the package looked like for a student. Students would get a package that was variable, anywhere from partial tuition to full tuition. It was usually only for years G1 and G2. And then after that, students were completely on their own to support themselves the duration of their program. In some cases, departments might have had local resources they could supplement the GSAS award with. In some cases, parents and family members might be giving some supplemental funds. And otherwise, our students were either working, TFs, RAs, other positions around the university, or some of them were actually borrowing. So very different from what you see today. No. Just as with the other parts of the university, students were charged tuition and fees, and anything that wasn't covered by the GSAS grant or department funds was the responsibility of the student. Okay, so I believe what you're talking about is our interfaculty programs. So the PhD programs we offer in partnership with the professional schools around the university. And to answer that question, you have to go back to how these programs were created. In most cases, there was a pre-existing doctoral program housed at that particular school. So in the example you mentioned, School Public Health, there was a Doctor of Science degree that was at the School of Public Health, completely independent of GSAS. It was a research doctoral program with scholarly dissertations, but it was not something that was part of the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences. The School of Public Health approached GSAS in terms of forming a partnership to have that program morph into a PhD. So thinking about the pre-existing program, the Doctor of Science, those students received financial aid from the School of Public Health in amounts that were not quite the same as what we offered here at GSAS. So at the time the program was launched, the School of Public Health had to think about how to rectify that situation and close the gap. One of the things they did, and one of the things that the other schools have tended to do at launch of these new programs, is to reduce the size of the program in order to provide more generous awards to a smaller number of students. In many cases, that still left something of a gap between the prevailing standard at GSAS and what the program was offering. And what happened was that we launched with that gap. And we launched with that gap for two reasons. One is that the schools had committed to actively fundraise to close that gap as soon as possible. And number two, even with that gap, the fact was that that gap was still far smaller than a generation of students immediately preceding that group had had doing a program that was very similar in duration and composition to the PhD. So it was felt that in the grand scheme of things, the school is still making a giant leap forward in terms of the financial support of their students, and they were committing to do even more to get to the GSAS level. And we're seeing schools gradually do that over time. So the Kennedy School, for example, recently added the TF top-offs for the G3 and G4 students who had guaranteed teaching. And that helped bring them up to a level now where they now match what we're doing in the other GSAS social science programs.